I just recently got moved into a big project, this really complex organization, right? Lots of verticals and the typical people, you know, maybe not talking to each other like they should because they're so focused on their thing. And it kind of reminds me of, some other things that I've seen around change management, right? So these new systems come in to these complex organizations that traditionally, people work together, they know each other, they talk, they might go to lunch, but they probably should be working a little closer together on some things. And they implement this new system that forces them to start to work together, and it's a little challenging because now it's you're forced to do that kind of thing. Have you seen that kind of? I'm sure you have. Does it ring any bells?
Yeah, I think, it's the age old art of the communication. And just when we think we're communicating enough, we realize we're not doing it enough at all. And then when you bring, yourself working with, say, a client, and you don't know how they all typically work together, um, it can be really complex. And I think you're right. Like, you bring a bunch of people together, and they may not be used to getting together all the time. You're hoping they are. I think where we go wrong, especially on the consulting or vendor side, right, is we assume that there's a lot of communication, right? And we find
Yes,
later it's not.
that's that's very true. A lot of assumptions. Of course, we'll be fine. We
Yeah.
can do this. We've been working together for years. It's a little different
Yeah.
when you actually put something in that forces you to work together in a way that you hadn't done it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been, and there are a lot of change management professionals out there. I've been through some pretty good ones actually. I have to admit, when I first, you know, get into those rooms and they try to do these exercises, I don't really take to it like a duck to water. A little apprehensive, like, oh, what is this? But by the end of it, I have to admit, these things are pretty effective.
Yeah.
Forces you to, the sticky notes are always a kind of an interesting exercise that you go through. You write down the different areas that you care about, and they do theirs, and start writing the dependencies between these things, and maybe even shifting the order of what order things start to happen. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're having the conversations you need to have.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your thought about this idea of change management in general? And let me be more specific, because I feel like that phrase, uh, you know, and the reason I'm bringing this up is, we've been talking a few minutes about building relationships with people, whether we need to be in person or not. Change management, I feel like, is embraced as a phrase, as a discipline, and sometimes it's not. And
Yeah.
yet, when it's not, I feel like people are just putting a new spin or a new phrase. But whatever we call it, I think it's still so important. And I guess my question is, helping people navigate through change, do you feel it can be left to its own devices, or do you feel it needs to be nurtured? I guess that's my question.
So I think my answer might not be completely popular, but I've seen plenty of projects be very successful without focused change management. But I've also seen projects go horribly, horribly wrong, spend way too much money, spend way too much time, and it all could have been avoided if they did change management. So I think it's better to thoughtfully do it, because I think that significantly increases the chances of success. Um, but sometimes you can do things without it. I don't know how you tell which ones are going to be successful or not. Like, what if these things are true, then you don't really need to do change, or maybe it's a little bit less change management than a bigger full blown thing. But I think I would err on the side, if it was my money and I
Yeah.
was spend a lot of money, put something in that was really important, I probably would. Actually, I wouldn't probably. I definitely would take time to attend to change management.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, and I want to come back to something you said in a minute. I mean, my quick answer is I think strong leaders who have a real appreciation for why they're doing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Implementing a new system, changing how their business process is going to work, um, has a real distinct um, sense of clarity on how they're going to serve their customers better. I think they naturally will do things that we would all label as change
Change
management.
management. Yeah.
And in that regard, then it's not this separate effort. In fact, you got me thinking now the way you said that your response is not what I was expecting you to say. But
Yeah.
it's really resonating with me. I feel like when it is having to be a separate behavior or activity, something you have to invest in, that's probably a sign that things are sort of getting off the rails already. Because I don't, I think the leaders who are leading their teams through quote change, they know they have to do it almost, it's kind of like breathing, breathe in, breathe out.
Yeah.
It's
Just an
all part
instinct.
of
Right.
it. And I feel like teams that feel like going and investing and doing it separately and thinking this band-aid approach is going to work, they are not going to necessarily hit the mark, because what they're not hitting the root, which is investing in leaders or bring leaders lead the change who actually are very focused on what their vision is.
Hmm. I think you're right. I think you're right. So probably in those situations where they didn't do a formal change management process, the leader just instinctively kind of knew enough. Like, you're painting that vision, that end state. This is what it's going to be. This is why we're doing it. Why it's important, and motivating people um, to do it and make the thing happen in the right way. So that's, I think, again, hearing you say it makes me kind of reflect back on why I answered the way I did. But that's probably true.
Yeah, I appreciate how you said it, because again, it cut right to the point, and it made me wanted me to ask you, like, for the times you saw it go well where it wasn't separate, you know, was there something about the project or the leader
I
that
think the
stood
leader
out to you?
is probably both. It's probably both. But I think the leader's the key. And then the project probably wasn't. It was probably within their vertical.
Yeah,
Didn't really touch many others. It was just something that needed to happen within their shop primarily, and it wasn't. It didn't really touch some of these other departments so much, or if it did, it was so minimal. It really wasn't that big of a change for them.
yeah, yeah,
But man, some of these projects, $1 billion projects that I know I've been a part of. I'm sure you've been a part of, mega projects too. That you have got to do that, because people are just set in their ways. They've got their own expectations. They're worried about their job. That's a killer, man.
yeah.
If you don't set expectations and things up front, and people think that that's going to threaten their livelihood, forget it. You're done.
Right.
Um, yeah, no, it's good. Good conversation.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.